You know, sometimes a revolution can ignite, burn, and completely reshape a country so fast that the rest of the world barely even has time to notice. That is exactly what happened in Nepal. This is the story of a nation's hidden uprising. It all started quietly, but just beneath the surface of everyday life, you could almost feel this pressure building, a kind of deep seismic tension that was just about to find its breaking point. And that right there, that's the heart of this story. An entire generation rising up, a government pushed to the absolute brink, and a world that was pretty much looking the other way. So, to really understand how it all fell apart, we have to go back to the beginning. To get why there was an explosion, you first have to understand the years of silence that came before it. See, this wasn't some sudden event. It was the result of years and years of quiet, simmering anger. The country was, for all intents and purposes, split in two. On one side, you had this entrenched political elite, seen by so many as corrupt and completely out of touch. And on the other side, a massive youth population, staring down a future with no jobs and no opportunities. This wasn't just about money, it was a fundamental breakdown of hope. Every fire needs a spark, right? For years, all that frustration was the fuel, just waiting. But it needed something to ignite it. And then, the government made a huge, critical mistake. In a move that was almost certainly meant to quiet people down, the government banned several of the country's most popular social media and messaging apps. They just cut the line. They severed one of the main ways an entire generation communicated, probably thinking it would bring control. Instead, it lit a firestorm. And this is a really important point to get. The social media ban wasn't the cause of the anger. Oh no, that was already there. It had been simmering for years. The ban was just the catalyst. It was the spark that turned all that private frustration into a very, very public roar. And roar they did. What started as just a whisper of dissent, well, it very quickly grew into something that absolutely no one could ignore. The speed of it all, it was just staggering. What began on day one as a few small groups in the capital just exploded. By day 10, that's just over a week later, it was a fully coordinated nationwide movement that had paralyzed the entire country. This wasn't just a protest anymore. No, this was a full-blown popular uprising. From the biggest city to the smallest towns, a generation was on the move, and they were demanding to be heard. And this is where the story takes a much darker turn. Because when a system is pushed to its breaking point, it often pushes back, hard. The streets that had been filled with chants and signs, they were about to be filled with something else entirely. What started as peaceful demonstrations quickly turned into violent confrontations. Those chants and signs gave way to ugly clashes with police forces on streets all across the country. The streets literally became battlegrounds. The human costs started to mount as serious injuries were being reported everywhere. The calls for change were being answered with brutal force. And then the climax. Faced with a nationwide movement that just would not back down, and a complete loss of control in the streets, the system fractured. The prime minister resigned. The government had completely lost its grip. But look, the prime minister's resignation, that wasn't the end of the story. In fact, if you stop there, you miss the entire point. Because this was never, ever just about one leader. So you have to ask, right? Was this entire uprising, the chaos, the collapse of a government, was it really just about a few banned apps? The answer, of course, goes much, much deeper. This was a rebellion against a totally broken system. It was a fight against the corruption that stole their opportunities, against the inequality that divided their nation, and against that crushing, soul-destroying feeling of having no future. The social media ban, it wasn't the cause. It was just the final insult. At the end of the day, what happened in Nepal wasn't just a local story. It's a universal warning. It's a warning about what happens when an entire generation feels like it has nothing left to lose. Because then, they become capable of changing everything. A warning sent from the streets from a generation that simply refused to stay silent.